All right. So, hey everyone, I'm talking with Amy, Amy Jen Sue, and she's written this book called The Leader You Want to Be. I was excited about the title, 5 Essential Principles for Bringing Out Your Best Self Every Day. I mean, I'm thinking about, and I work with people who want to bring their best selves when they come to work, and it's easy to get lost.
Yes.
In work. It's easy to be, like you're saying, it's back-to-back meetings. It's like time pressure. It's like constant problems, constantly on. And you're saying you have these 5 P's, these 5 principles for bringing your best self. And the first one is purpose.
Yes.
Talk to me about that a little bit.
Purpose is that inner compass, right? And it is, again, like authenticity, one of those words that is being thrown around a lot. We're all talking a lot about purpose. It can feel a little squishy. And so I hope in the book to offer a more concrete way of thinking about purpose. So when we feel on purpose, my sense is folks feel a great sense of contribution. So what's your highest and best use and highest and best contribution to the world or to the organization now? And then also your passion. What brings you inspiration now? What are you seeking to learn? Where do you find yourself just spending time, even when no one tells you to spend time there? And really the intersection of those two things, I think, is when we feel that sense of purpose. And it also suggests that purpose is dynamic. It's not static. It's not a one-time thing. It's something we have to stay connected to. Like what you were excited about a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, may be totally different than today.
What role might we have, if any, in helping people kind of find this purpose and leverage it?
I think being in conversation with people about contribution and passion is the way to go. So often managers and leaders sit down with their direct reports or team and we're talking about the task at hand. But how often before a project does a leader ask somebody, hey, what are you excited to contribute to this project? And what are you excited about? Or conversely, on the back end of a milestone, a lot of times teams will tell me, wow, we all worked really hard. We delivered this great milestone and it was on to the next to do. And so how often are teams pausing to ask each other, what were we proud of in that project? What did we accomplish? And what did we each individually enjoy?
You know what I love about that is that it doesn't take very long to do it and it's free. Right?
Yes.
you can have a 10 or 15 minute conversation and just acknowledge progress and where the energy was. I love noticing people's energy. And I bet when you work with leaders, you watch them when they start to light up. You're kind of like, what's going on for you?
Right.
There's a section in the book, and I'm not sure if I'm on the right at the right point on purpose or not, but it's about managing energy. And one of my favorite topics. Is it okay to talk about manage? How can we manage energy, our own and others?
Yeah, energy is such an important thing. We always think about time, right? But really energy is such a big part of it. So energy, just as we just spoke about, we could feel ourselves get excited as we're working on things that make a difference and we feel passionate about. And I think just being aware physically of what are the times that you do feel like something is energy giving or energy producing versus when are the times where you feel energy drained. And so it's important to stay connected to that and be in self-observation around that. And then more practically, how does energy flow? I think in the book I mentioned there are some of us who are burst taskers where we get a lot of energy for those quick hits, making the deal, and others more like myself where we're more steady as she goes. And that really implies a different approach to calendar, to how you manage your workload, and to pay attention to that.
I think you also noticed or mentioned, notice when your peak energy time is. Like for many of us as we've grown older, it's those morning hours. Maybe when we were in college, it was, the evening hours, but you have this power band of time. I think you mentioned in the book, notice when you're at your best.
Yes, the power hours. Those power hours are different for each of us, as you mentioned, some of us in the morning, some very few, I think, in the afternoon, some in the evening, but aligning your most important projects and the things that require your highest critical thinking and focus to those power hours.
So if I'm going to bring my best self, if people are going to bring their best self, we've got to think about purpose. Then we have to think about process. Now I'm starting to sink a little bit, Amy, because now we got like, I don't know, structures and all kinds of things. And I just want to be free. So talk to me about process.
Process is a funny thing, right? It depends on your relationship to it. Some of us feel like process feels like a cage and a sinking feeling. For others of us, crossing things off that to-do list or
Mm,
having that perfectly noted calendar feels great. So step one is understanding your own relationship to process and not having it be a cage, but in fact, something that provides greater freedom and autonomy and a protection of time and energy.
mm, mm. So you use the term ritual in the book, which I really love because, it doesn't quite feel the same as like, okay, an organizational structural thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
A ritual like Doug Conant at the end of the day, former CEO of Campbell Soup, stops by people's desks and says thanks to them for something they've done. It's a ritual. Talk to me a little bit about rituals and the kinds of things that help us bring our best self.
Rituals are, an ancient concept around, how we flow through the day. I like that word ritual more than I like process or structure, because perhaps you have a ritual in the early morning where you take a little time to contemplate the day or set your intentions. Some days maybe that happens at exactly 6, sometimes at 6:15. So it creates a little bit of flexibility and wiggle room, but still a reminder to how we flow and operate through the day.
Okay. Do you have personal rituals that are helping you bring your best self?
Yes, I definitely live by my rituals. I can feel when I'm starting to not feel like my best self. Usually a ritual is off. And so the one I just mentioned, I've been really experimenting with recently around my son started high school and is on a new school schedule. So that gave me opportunity to reboot and rethink about the morning. So I've now been trying to spend the morning outside, just even 20 minutes in my backyard. And then recently have repicked up Wayne Dyer's The Power of Intention. So I've been reading a few pages of that each morning and really thinking about who do I want to be today and what's the impact I hope to have.
Yes. You remind me of Ken Blanchard, who somewhere along the line talks about try to start the day slowly. When
Yeah.
you get up, don't check your email right off the bat. Don't get on your computer. Take even just a few minutes to, you have language like devotion, you have language like contemplation, you have language like centering yourself.
Yes.
It's a great ritual for leaders.
Right. That the morning frequency, I think, carries you through the day. And I know for me personally, I feel the difference when I'm just right away picking up my phone to check email.
Mm. I've started, I think for about a year, I really let myself go. I did not exercise like I wanted to. I didn't watch my diet like I wanted to. And, a few months ago, I started, exercising and paying more attention to what I'm eating and the time of day when I'm eating and not those late night snacks and all of that. But the thing that I'm noticing about this particular go round is I started very loosely journaling. In other words, I'm keeping track of how far I walked and did I eat well. And there's something great about just a few sentences
Yes.
that describe, how I felt like I did, or I might even just write, hey, controlled my evening eating yesterday,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
I'm enjoying that.
Yeah. I think
See,
that the addition of the journaling, which I love, right, it's that act of self-observation. And I don't hear in it any judgment, right? Because the risk of that, or any time we want to implement or bring back in ritual or structure, is if it's being led by a should, instead of, again, the word compassion, compassion for ourselves, and to be able to witness our experience. And so how lovely, when we notice, hey, I ate well and that felt really good, and celebrating that on paper.
hmm hmm So if I want to bring my best self, if the people that we're working with, we want to help them bring their best selves. So we're thinking about purpose, we're thinking about process, and the third P in your book is.
People.
Mm.
And the guidance of that chapter is we raise our own game by raising the game of others. And so I think as a manager leader, uh, we're always all trending between player and coach, but that coach side in terms of building greater capability for the overall system and how do we all rise together, I think is really the thesis of that particular chapter.
Help me bring out the best in others. So I love your idea, right? I raise my own game when I raise the game of others. Help me raise the game of others. How do we do that?
It really, as you think about working with folks on your team, one, it begins with, do I have the right people for the work we're trying to do and the goals we're trying to accomplish? And then do I see them each as individuals, each with their own strengths and unique talents and contributions? And how do I capitalize on that as a manager leader? And then also, real concretely and tactically, that then drives, wow, how am I going to choose to delegate? Where am I going to choose to empower folks? Where is it really about my need for control versus where I should be letting go? And so I think there's the philosophy of it, but then the everyday nature of it is, what are you offering in terms of opportunities to your team? What is the guidance you're providing? And even on a day where someone needs constructive feedback, are we compassionately having that conversation to make sure they're able to move forward or do what's best for the organization?
So I'm thinking about, there is a tendency to see the things that need to be fixed, the things that are wrong. I did not hear that in your language when you started talking about bringing out the best, a little bit, on the constructive criticism. You talked about their strength and all of that kind of thing. Help us overcome our tendency to focus on the dark side.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like people are going to make their mark based on where their strengths lie. And Dan, I remember one of your videos about the tennis ball that I just love. What's your tennis ball? And so I think one of the jobs of leaders is to take each person and be able to see, like, who is this person? What do we all appreciate about them? What do they uniquely bring to the table? Am I communicating and acknowledging the contributions and impact they have? And in terms of growth and evolution, given where the business now needs to head, where could they focus in terms of their own development and really be the next best version of themselves?
The word stretching comes to mind, and I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about this. So, like, where do we need to go? You were talking about how, where do you need to go? What are good suggestions for helping stretch people a little bit, right? I mean, there's this pushy thing, right? And there's this, like, you're not good enough. And then there's the, let's stretch your talent, your strength a little bit. Talk about that.
I think to the extent that a leader can help paint an aspiration. I mean, I know each coaching client I work with, when I first meet them, we do the 360, and folks are always surprised that a good portion of the 360, I want to hear about when this person is at their best. Tell me about that, right? Because I want to anchor the development on their base of who they are. So that, there's already a portion where they can lead well. And now let's talk about where they could still learn. So I think the starting point, if it's from deficit, there's something wrong with you, there's a gap, you have the wrong DNA. How demotivating is that, right? Instead of, let me paint the picture of what I believe you could be, the trajectory you're on, and let's bend that curve together.
Absolutely. I recall, I worked at a local college and Penn State affiliate for a while, quite 15 years actually. And I was asked by one of the college's clients to talk with one of their leaders who had kind of plateaued. Mm-hmm. And I still remember we met at Dunkin' Donut for coffee and we were having this conversation. And I said, why do you think we're here? And she said, well, I'm not performing the way the company wants me to perform. And I listened for a minute and I said, well, really, I think we're here because you're worth it. They believe in you. Yes. And honest to goodness, I think that moment was the shift for her. Everything else we did was almost academic, because she shifted the way she thought about herself and the way she thought they were thinking about her. I just think it's so powerful for us to see what people do well and acknowledge it and build on it.
Yeah, I love that story. What a great moment.
I'm talking with Amy Jen Sue about her new book. It's 5 Essential Principles for Bringing Out Your Best Self Every Day. I was excited to get the book, and the concept speaks to me because that's what I want to do, and that's what I want to help others do. And she's written the book around 5 P's: purpose, process, people, presence, and peace. So we've talked about purpose, we talked about process, we've talked about people. Let's talk about presence.
Presence, what a word, right? My first book was on leadership presence, and much in the frame of how we show up to others, particularly in our communications and style. I think presence here is framed differently in terms of our ability to stay present, even in the face of that which is uncomfortable to us or which doesn't feel like our comfort zone. And in those moments, can we still stay present and make a more mindful choice, or perhaps a choice that's more impactful or effective for the situation at hand than perhaps our usual go-tos?
Yeah, well, there are some knee-jerk reactions that maybe don't serve us or others well that
Yes.
we could watch. I like this idea, of a presence and how we show up to others.
Yes.
And sometimes it's hard to get a handle on that, or maybe it's a little awkward when we actually find out how we're showing. Because look, you think you're, this wonderful person, and you are, but sometimes other people don't share don't share that opinion.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this idea of, how we show up to others.
I think understanding our ripple effect and the way we show up to others is important, right? And again, this whole idea of best self, I think there's days where we come out of a meeting and we kind of know I was really my best self there, and it felt like I was connected and I was authentic, and we all had a great dialogue. Even if we disagreed, there was healthy debate. And I think we all know those moments where you kind of go back to your office and you say, wow, I was not having a good day there. And I either didn't say what I was actually thinking and went passive aggressive or passive, or, I said way too much. I didn't listen. I didn't really take in others' perspectives. And I'm not really proud of like how I showed up when somebody disagreed. So I think in terms of driving healthy debate and the way we now need to collaborate, it is something important to keep one's eye on.
Yeah, my mind goes back to something you said previous, and that is somehow observe yourself, pay attention to how you are. And it's true, right? I mean, we've all walked out of a meeting thinking, shut your mouth. What is your problem?
Yeah.
Talk too much. We didn't ask enough questions. I'm working with a group right now, and one of the people in the group said, they're working on emotional intelligence. And one of the people said, yeah, I'm taking my daughter to school, and I'm hanging out a little bit with other parents. And all of a sudden I realized they're asking me questions. I'm not asking them any questions. And it's like, awesome. I mean, that's exactly what
Yes.
self-observation there.
Absolutely. And also just a recognition of there's a piece in that chapter on our choice of voice, right? And so sort of the voice of context, the voice of clarity. And in the example you just gave, the person having this moment of, oh my goodness, my voice of curiosity has gone quiet and it's time for me to get curious about the other person.
Love that. So what is peace? That's the last P in these principles. What does peace have to do with bringing your best self?
The peace chapter, to be honest, Dan, I think is a bit of what's up for me personally, in terms of saying, gosh, how can at a certain point in our life do we loosen the grip? I'm kind of a natural worry wart. I worry, I ruminate, I can be my own harshest critic. And so to be honest, sometimes it's hard to enjoy the journey. And so part of why, that chapter's in there is that my hope is for folks who are working hard and who do hold a high bar and are well-intended, that they can loosen the grip on themselves just enough to really experience and taste life with a little more appreciation and joy than perhaps they give themselves permission.
It scares me to death. How can I be excellent and loosen the grip? How do I
Yes,
do that?
absolutely, right? And at some point, maybe in a younger version of ourselves, maybe my high school self or my college self, that mean inner critic that I needed to make sure that I got the paper done on time, probably served its purpose. But now, as you know, I near 50 and I have a son who just started high school. There are days I kind of say, wow, look at this. You know, on the one hand, I want enough worry that I keep the bar high. But am I worrying so much that I've sort of lost a bit of presence to life? And so that's what that chapter really explores for each of us to say, you know, at what point can the grip just loosen enough to get a little more out of life?
I have a loud inner critic. Loser, you're a loser, you know, and I don't know very many people who don't. I think,
Yes.
you know, we walk around talking to ourselves with dark language.
Yes.
So I don't know. I don't want to get into like, you're awesome, you know. I can tell when I'm lying to myself.
Yes.
You know, give me a suggestion or two for dealing with the loud inner critic.
You know, I hope that all of us can come to peace with it. I remember a teacher once said to me, it's not that it ever goes away, but it's almost like the difference of being in a phone booth with a noisy fly versus having that same noisy fly buzzing around your head, but you're standing by the ocean. And so I think just coming to a new relationship with our inner critic, to thank the inner critic for the benefit that it's trying and the values that it's trying to preserve, but not have it come at a place of sacrifice, I think, to one's life or ability to experience all of it.
You reminded me as you said that of, you know, there's this time in my life where I was thinking about this, and yes, thank the inner critic. And then I like to say, what do you want to do about that, big boy? You know what I mean? You know,
Yeah.
because I think the inner critic loves that helplessness too, of like,
Yes.
you know, it hides behind the you're a loser, you're weak, or you can't, you know what I mean? It's beating you down. What do you want to do about that helps me a little bit. And it makes him shut up sometimes too, because he doesn't want to bring something up.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And I think again that ability just to just observe.
Mm.
Oh, there, you know, there it is again. But rather than having that stop you or keep you from moving forward on purpose, or for doing the things, you know, the courage that sometimes it takes to put oneself out there. I think coming to peace with the inner critic becomes an important piece of that.
So I've been talking with Amy Jen Sue about her new book, The Leader You Want to Be. The title is Aspirational. It speaks to me, 5 essential principles for bringing out your best self. I just, thanks for the book. I joked about, you know, why another leadership book, because I get them every day in the mail
Yes.
and they're stacking up, but I get to spend time with people like you, and that makes
Thank
me
you.
better. And I think it also helps others be better as well. So thanks for that.